adista shikeshava. Sita di kim prabhaseta. Kima sita rajeta kim. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged and transcended? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As there are symptoms from each and every man in terms of his particular situation. Similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man. As a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is a very good verse. Arjuna Vacha Stita Pragyasika Bhasa. Samadhistasya Keshava. Stita Di Kim Prabhaseta Kim Asita Rajeta Kim. So in this verse, the Sanskrit says Keshava, O Krishna. Stita Di, one fixed in Krishna consciousness. Kim, what? Prabhaseta speaks. Kim, how? Asita does remain still. Rajita walks. Kim, how? In other words, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged and transcended? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? So in other words, Arjuna wants to know how to recognize a genuine devotee. We should also be interested in knowing how to recognize a genuine devotee. Unfortunately, in the present situation of the world, there are many fake so-called sadhus. So how can we determine who's real and who's not? Well, that's what this verse is going to talk about. And the purport is this. As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. So this is a very nice verse. The subject that this verse is about, well, is basically Arjuna is trying to find out how to recognize a bona fide spiritual master. He wants to know, how does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? How does he walk? Yes. So in other words, if something looks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck, guess what? It's a duck. Right? The same way, if someone is always talking about Krishna and only saying bona fide things that are from the Shastra and always acts in humility and only talks from Shastra and so forth, well, you can assume that that's a genuine devotee. Only eats prasadam, doesn't use any vulgar thoughts or voice anything vulgar or uh, gives vulgar examples. Sometimes the devotees, they give a class and they'll give speculative opinions or sometimes they give vulgar examples. That means they have a spiritual problem still. We should only speak from Shastra. Uh, Giving personal opinions is not really bona fide. What is bona fide is speaking from Shastra. So someone is only speaking from Shastra, uh, one can trust that what they're saying is true, and one has a chance to validate that what they're saying is true, because they should be able to ask the person, where does Krishna say what you just said? And then the speaker should be able to give, the quotes from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna has said what that person just said. Then it's also very easy to recognize a fraud, a person who speaks not from Shastra, but gives their own opinions. So then they're not bona fide. Thank God that we have a baseline, let's say, criterion for recognizing who is bona fide and who is not bona fide. If we didn't have that baseline criterion, then anybody comes and they tell nice jokes, they make people laugh, and but basically they're just speaking nonsense. So although it's a lot of laughs, so forth, but that's not Shastra. So Prabhupada, uh, he never really spoke a lot of jokes. He was always on, uh, right on the Shastric line. And especially when he was preaching, uh, there might be every once in a while something that was a little bit funny, but it was not, uh, let's say, deviating from Shastra. Okay, so Arjuna is trying to understand what are the symptoms of a genuine devotee who is on the transcendental level. And he says, how does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? And in the purport, which I already read, but I'll read it again. As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms and various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. Okay, now what's stated below? Text 55. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pujahati Yada Kaman Sarvam Partha Manogatan Atmani Vatmana Tusta Sita Pragyastaduchyate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Okay, so this is a very important verse. And it says in the purport, the Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities, has all the good qualities of the great stages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualities, no good qualification, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoction. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous effort. Therefore, one has to be engaged himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. For this, devotional service will instantly help one on the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. These are very important statements in this verse and in this purport. And you will see as time goes on that a person who's actually transcendentally situated has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. So, one time Prabhupada was preaching, and he looked at the devotees, and he looked at this one devotee and said, "Are you happy?" And the devotee made a certain face, no. And Prabhupada said, but you must be happy. Again, he made a face, no. He said, if you're not happy and you're in Krishna consciousness, that means that you are not following the rules and regulations. There is some fault in your practice of Krishna consciousness. So uh, here in this verse, it says, a highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires, resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. These are very, very, very profound statements here given by Srila Prabhupada. But it's a fact. If you're actually practicing Krishna consciousness, you must be happy. If you're not happy, as Prabhupada said, then there is some discrepancy in your practice. What is that discrepancy? Well, there's a lot of different things that can be there, but the proof that one is actually Krishna conscious is that they're happy because they're no longer in the let's say the meat grinder of sense gratification. People throw things into the meat grinder and it chops them all up and it comes out squeezed out. It doesn't look any more like meat. So that meat grinder in the material world is the desires for sense gratification. So once one has desires for sense gratification rather than desires for pleasing Krishna. Now, we are not Mayavadis. The Mayavadi is seeking no desires. They try and eliminate all desires, which is not possible, but they might be able to maintain it for some time. But they don't become happy by doing it. They might claim they're happy, but they will go back to being materially attached after doing a lot of severe tapasya. So you can only be happy, genuinely happy, if you have a relationship with Krishna, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and relationship with bona fide spiritual master, who's you're a devotee of Krishna. Then in that association, you can be happy. It's not an artificial happiness based on sense gratification. It's genuine happiness based on love and devotion for Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. So, what is the symptom of someone who's actually Krishna conscious? They're always happy. And it's not artificial happiness, it's genuine happiness. When it's genuine happiness, they can also, well, let's put it like this. Someone who's genuinely happy becomes infectious. He can infect other people also to become genuinely happy by following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Someone who is troubled by the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness are not going to be happy because there's duality in their minds. They're doing something that's good, but they're also still attached to things that are not good. So they cannot be a happy person like that. But when you're uniquely thinking, willing, acting in Krishna consciousness, then you will be happy all the time and peaceful. The people who are not Krishna conscious, they always have problems. Every time you see them, they have a new problem. And they're not happy. You know anybody like that? Yeah. There are a lot of people like that. And some of them are devotees also. They always have a problem and they're not happy. Or there's some kind of upheaval in their life, or they get into arguments with people and so forth. So we have to be very careful not to fall into that dangerous mindset of not being happy and not being satisfied. So therefore, here Prabhupada says, the highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense of desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Well, one time, as I said, Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and then he looked at the devotees and he said, "Are you happy?" And a lot of devotees said yes. There was one person that said no. And Prabhupada, he said, but you must be happy. If you're not happy, then there is some discrepancy in your practice of Krishna consciousness. So that is, let's say, the hallmark of a genuine devotee. They'll always be happy because they're Krishna conscious. They're not troubled by the different ups and downs in the material world. And there are always ups and downs in the material world. But up or down, the devotee continues to practice all the regulated principles of Krishna consciousness. That keeps them happy. When you can chant your rounds every day, when you can hear something from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, when you can have nice prasadam and so forth, you feel happy. You know, take a bath early in the morning and begin to chant and have good association, so forth. You're happy. Nice prasadam. You can't forget that. Yeah. So in that way, you're happy. And the whole world might be in complete turmoil, but you're happy because you have faith in Krishna. You have faith that Krishna is going to protect you. And you're not negative, you're always positive, right? There are people who are always negative. There's always something wrong. Whenever you meet them and say, oh, this thing's wrong, that thing's wrong, you're always criticizing, fault finding. Fault finding fault finding is very easy because you don't have to be an expert in anything to fault find. So some people are expert in fault finding because you don't have to have any real education to do that. But to say things that are bona fide, well, you have to have some education to do that. But if you're a fault finder, you just look at that person. They didn't say that. They didn't do this. Look at the way they're dressed. You can make things up, so you don't need education for that. But if you want to be a bona fide person, you have to have knowledge, and that requires education. So, uh, and genuine devotees will always avoid the association of fault finders because that's what you would say is a downer. You know, we want to always be in association of uppers. People are always see the positive things in life and not to always talk about the negative things in life. Yeah, you can talk about some negative things, but that's not the main thrust of what you're talking about. Okay, so therefore Prabhupada says, the highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. That's a profound statement. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. So that's where we should be situated, always happy in our natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Now, if we don't have any service, how could we be happy? No, you're happy when you have service and when it's regulated also. It's not stop and go, stop and go. It's regulated. Then you're happy. And you're healthy also. Every day, eating at the same time, doing things at the same time every day. So you have a standard, let's say, schedule every day. It's not that one day it's this and the next day it's something else, and then it's something else the next day. That actually puts people in anxiety. You don't know what's going to happen the next day, right? But when you're steady and your determination, number one, to chant 16 good rounds every day, that makes the day good. And when you're not able to do that, it gives you a lot of, let's say, troubling thoughts and troubling things that are happening around you. So we should begin the day by chanting 16 rounds, good rounds. And then we're ready to meet the world. And it's the world of Krishna consciousness. But if we don't chant our rounds, we're not in the world of Krishna consciousness. We're in the world of constant, let's say, problems. And, and there are places in the world, well, everywhere, there's constant problems. Why? Because people are not Krishna conscious. So all they have is problems in their life. And all they see are problems everywhere else. So oftentimes there's the example, do you think the glass is half empty or half full, right? So if you always think it's half empty, there's something wrong. If you think it's half full, there's something right. In other words, you always see something good, whatever you see. And if you only see something bad, you'll say that the glass is half empty. So we have to learn to see things positively. Now, there's misbehavior, of course, in the world. But actually, a devotee learns in two ways. By seeing a pure devotee like Prabhupada, they see what is good to do. And when they see a nonsense person doing nonsense things, they also learn from that person. They learn what not to do. So both ways, they're being educated. Now, if they see what Prabhupada is doing, you cannot imitate him, but you can follow his instruction. If you try and imitate Prabhupada, that is wrong. But if you simply follow his instructions, that is right. But on the other hand, when you see people misbehaving, yeah, they're also guru in the sense that they're teaching you what not to do by their misbehavior. So you can be educated by the pure devotee, and you can be educated also by the nonsense person. But if you follow what the nonsense person is doing, then you also become nonsense. But if you learn by seeing the things that nonsense people do, uh, and you learn not to do those things, then you've been educated by that person in a sense. So you can accept that person also as some kind of a teacher. He's teaching you what not to do. But then you have to be also taught what to do. And that's why we are reading Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and trying to hear about Srila Prabhupada and his transcendental activities. Okay, so therefore, again, the highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. So that's called self-identity. People identify themselves in different ways. A lot of people try and identify themselves as baseball players. Yeah. So they collect baseball cards, right? And in these cards, you have a picture of a baseball, uh, a player, and you have a information about his hitting, how many hits he takes, and what is his hitting average, and people memorize these things, and then they exchange these uh, uh, baseball players, basketball players, and some of those cards over time become very expensive. They can sell them for like $100 or $50. You bought it for like $1, and now it's become $50, right? So there are people that are and they go to these what do you call it? Not fairs, but they go to these uh, these programs where people are exchanging or buying or exchanging these cards of baseball players or football players and so forth. And some of the cards, are expensive. Uh, so there's different types of, let's say, activity that goes on in the world. Most of it is nonsense. Uh, so you have to be careful not to be, like, for example, I was visiting this one family. Every year I would go to their house for, a day and spend time with them. And they had, in this one family, they had this one child, a very nice child. So when he was only 3 years old, he had uh, pictures of Krishna and he had all kinds of devotee paraphernalia around him, right? He was always talking about uh, this, Krishna consciousness, and you're reading little books about Krishna, baby Krishna. So then he got a little bit older, and now everything about Krishna was replaced by dinosaurs. I think after 2 years, I went back to see this family, and there were dinosaurs everywhere in their house. Little ones like this. and he knew the names of each one. This is Brahmasaurus. This is Akasaurus. So all of the Krishna consciousness now had been replaced by dinosaurs. Huh?
Dino conscious.
Yeah, dino consciousness. And it was shocking, because his whole mind was seized by dinosaurs, and he had all different types of dinosaurs, little facsimiles of dinosaurs, and we don't even know if dinosaurs actually existed. I mean, it might be, it might not be, but it's like a whole business uh, of making facsimiles of dinosaurs and selling them to little kids, right? And then they collect them. So when I first went to this family's house, there were only pictures and dolls of Krishna and Krishna devotees and things like that. But 2 years later, when I went back, no pictures of Krishna, only dinosaurs. Everywhere in the house, in the kitchen, in the dining room, everywhere there were these dinosaurs. So what happened? Well, the kid went to school and he started learning that there are dinosaurs. Right? And that's what happens when you go to mundane schools. You learn about dinosaurs and all kinds of nonsense things. And it completely seized his imagination. And he started buying all kinds of different dinosaur statues and all talking about dinosaurs all the time. He forgot about Krishna. Before he was talking about Krishna, now he's talking about dinosaurs. So we have to be careful. It's very easy for kids to be contaminated by going to school and learning things that are completely not necessary to learn. You don't really become educated by learning that there used to be dinosaurs and then looking at the facsimile, let's say, portraits of dinosaurs. And all of a sudden, it seizes your mind, and now you have to have a picture of every kind or statue of every kind of different dinosaur that existed. So later on, it might no longer be dinosaurs; it might be baseball. Now they have pictures of all the famous baseball players, and you have to, it has on their card, it gives you all the information about how many home runs they hit that year and the previous year. And then now, you have all these baseball cards. Then when you get a little bit older, and now you're interested in the stock market, and every day, is it up or is it down, right? So up, down, up, down, up, down, stock market, and then something else, then that's something else. Well, everything that is Maya captures the mind of people if they have no knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So we want people to keep their mind focused on Krishna, and we should be ourselves focused on Krishna. And the symptom of a person that's actually focused on Krishna is they'll be happy. Yes. And if they're not happy, then Prabhupada said there's some fault in the practice. Okay, I think we're over time now, right? Yeah, okay. So, are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Any questions? Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Oh,
Yes,
sorry. I think there was two
no,
of us.
that's all right.
I just want to know, like, should we be chanting our rounds the same time every day?
What time is that for you?
Sometimes I do it different times. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes when I'm at work.
Okay, well, the best time is uh, if you go to sleep early, let's say before 10 o'clock at night, and wake up early, let's say 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, you'll be able to chant almost all your rounds in the morning before you start working.
Okay.
If you go to sleep later than that, like after 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or 1 o'clock, you won't be able to wake up early and you'll be trying to chant your rounds all day long. Because let's say you go to sleep late, like 12 o'clock, and then you wake up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, already the day has started with responsibilities. You have to cook, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to go to work, so forth. So it's going to be very difficult to chant your rounds. So some people, they try and chant their rounds during the day or at night. Yeah, maybe you'll be able to do it, but it's not as good as the rounds you'll be chanting early in the morning before you start work and before you get caught up with responsibilities. So that's usually uh, 3 hours before sunrise. 3 hours before sunrise. That's called Brahma Muhurta. So if we can chant our rounds in the Brahma Muhurta time, there usually will be very good rounds with a lot of concentration, and you'll be happier. And then now you can face the world. But if you wake up 7 o'clock in the morning and you got to be at work at 8 o'clock, how are you going to chant your rounds? You're not going to be able to do it. And then you'll be trying to do it during the day or when you come back home. It's not the same thing as chanting your rounds when early in the morning where you're rested. Now you're taking a shower and you don't have to go to work for another 2 or 3 hours. So then you can chant more easily your rounds. I don't know if you have that experience or not, but it's always recommended to chant your rounds early in the morning.
I'm gonna do that. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Krishna Prabhupada. Okay, any other questions? That was a good question. Any other questions?
I have one. Yesterday in the temple, one of the devotee was putting a question. Like right now, Hindus in Bangladesh, they are kind of like, being put in trouble. So he was asking like, why can't temples teach them martial arts and, get prepared if someone, introduce, gets in a fight with them or in a.
Well, let's go to Kshatriya. Yeah, there should be Kshatriya. There's no doubt about it. You have to be able to defend your community. But the problem is in Bangladesh, Indians are vastly outnumbered. There's only 8% of Hindus, and the rest are all Muslims or something else.
So even he was putting a thought saying like, even if a group of people would come and attack, it would be hardly like 50 to 100. And if a devotee is good enough to handle like at least 10 at a time, then we're all good, is what he was putting a thought.
Well, yeah, at a time, but since you're outnumbered, eventually you're going to lose. Because you're outnumbered. There's 8% of the population in Bangladesh are Hindus. The rest are all Muslim. So you're outnumbered, right? So the writing is on the wall. They're going to wipe out the 8% also. Yeah. So better you just move away. Go back to India. You just have to, go past Bangladesh back to India, and it's a different story in India. Because you have majority Hindus in India. There's also problems there, but not as serious as in Bangladesh, where you're completely outnumbered. And and you have a lot, I don't say everyone, but a lot of the Muslims who are fanatical, right? And don't want Hindus. They don't like Hindus. Why? Let's ask the question, why? Well, because Hindus do things that are completely forbidden in Islam. They worship deities. That's completely forbidden in Islam. And they do other things too, but that one thing is really, why they don't want Hindus in a Muslim country, because Muslims think that this is completely forbidden in Quran to worship an idol. Of course, they're not idols. We know that deities are not idols, but you would have to educate the Bangladeshis that they're not worshiping they're not worshiping idols, they're worshiping deities, and there's a difference between a deity and an idol. But usually there's no, let's say, education given to the Muslims. This is our community, that's your community, And so without understanding the difference between an idol and a deity, and the Muslims say these are idols, and the Quran says you should not worship idols. So therefore, they want to purge the country of these persons who are engaging in what's illicit in their culture. They don't want people like that. So deities should stop worshiping. The Bangladeshi Hindus should stop worshiping deities. They should worship Bhagavad Gita. Now you're doing exactly what the Muslims do. They worship Quran. Now you're worshiping Bhagavad Gita. So they would not be so disturbed or so hateful deities. Now, there are the Sikhs. The Sikhs live in Muslim countries, and they're not being, let's say, slaughtered like the Hindus. Why? Because they don't have deities. Sikhs don't look that up. They don't worship deities. They worship, what do they worship? They worship their gurus, right? But they don't have idols of the gurus.
But idol worship is much better than what Sikhs and Muslims do when it matters. Like they worship their grave, sort of like
Who? The Muslims? Not all Muslims do that. And the Muslims hate other Muslims that do that. Really, they really hate them. They're worshiping, famous people that died, and they go to their graves and do worship. The strict Muslims completely reject that. They don't agree to do that. What does it say?
So they worship, they believe there is only one God which is genderless and eternal. They refer to God as Vaheguru. Sikhs
This
believe,
is Sikhs, right? Vaheguru, yeah.
Sikhs believe in rebirth and karma, meaning their religion is a way of life and that in every action they should remember God. Religion is a way of life and in every action they should remember God. That is their philosophy.
Okay. But go over to the first statement you made.
Sikhs believe there is only one God, which is genderless and eternal.
Yeah, which is genderless.
Yeah, they refer to God as Vaheguru. Sikhs believe in rebirth and karma.
So in other words, they're completely impersonalist.
Yeah. Sikhs believe in rebirth and karma, meaning their religion is a way of life and that in every action they should remember God.
Yeah, but who is God in their religion? Vaheguru.
Vaheguru. Genderless and eternal.
Yeah. So they're complete Mayavadis.
So are
That's why the Sikhs can live in Muslim countries without being slaughtered. Because they don't have deities in their temples. You walk in a temple, there's no deities, you know. There's just a book, you know. They're what's the name of their book? I forget. They anyway, they just have the book open. And but there are no deities. So they can subsist easily in Muslim countries. Muslims don't I don't hear the Muslims trying to, you know, massacre the Sikhs. Um, but the Hindus, yes, they massacre Hindus. That's why the Hindus should not worship deities in these Muslim countries. They should worship the Bhagavad Gita. Like the Muslims, they worship the Quran. And then the Muslims wouldn't say anything, you know. What's that? Yeah.
prohibits idol worship.
Yeah. Now, how did that happen? Well, their what was the name of the founder of the Sikhs? Guru Nanak.
Guru Nanak, yeah.
Yeah, Guru Nanak tried to make changes in Hinduism that would permit them to live peacefully with the Muslims and others, right? So he eliminated deity worship. And he made other, you know, things so that the Sikhs could live peacefully with the Muslims as opposed to the Hindus. So usually the Muslims, not always, but they usually don't attack the Sikhs because they don't, you know, they don't see them worshiping deities. So it's not really anathema for them.
Because it has fusing elements of Hinduism and Islam.
Yeah. Right.
That's why people often mistake
Sikhs
Sikhs as Muslims.
Yes. Yeah. And that was Guru Nanak that did that. Yeah. And Guru Govind Singh, what is it? Guru Govind.
Sahib.
Yes. He's the one that actually changed things so that they could live with the Muslims without being slaughtered. Guru Nanak also, but no, the other one, what was that? The last Sikh was Guru, I forget his name now. Guru Govind Singh, something like that. So they made an adjustment in the way they worship so that they would not be massacred, right? And it worked. Sikhs are usually not murdered by Muslims. They see them as, you know, okay, they don't have any mortis and things like that. So, huh? Guru Govind Singh.
We have 10 gurus. So
Yeah, he was the last guru.
he was last. Yeah.
Yeah.
From 1400s.
All right.
And the 11th Guru is Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Granth Sahib is the holy book.
The scripture.
Holy book.
Yeah, the Granth Sahib is the holy book.
It's
So
like-
that's what they will. They worship the Granth Sahib, just like the Muslims. They worship the Quran. So if you go into a Sikh temple, there's no deities there. There's just, you know, right in the middle of the room, there's a big book of the Granth Sahib, and but they do bhajans. You know, they sing, and it's like that. You know, they and that was done specifically by. I guess it was started by Guru Nanak, but it was Guru Govind Singh that actually, you know, I think he was the one that said, okay, this is the way we're going to do things from now on, you know, so we don't have to get murdered by our brothers, the Muslims. Okay. So, and if no more questions, we will stop. So tomorrow we're on second chapter, text 56.
Yes, ma'am.
We covered 55 and 50. No, 56 too.
So it's 56 tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Okay. All glories to Srila
Yeah.
Prabhupada ki jai. Howdy.
The devotee was putting that question, who was an active member of RSS in here back in India. They were saying like,
He's a member of RSS. There's a devotee, he's a member of RSS. Okay, and what is he saying?
they were saying like RSS kind of, trained most of the Indians in martial arts, like Hindus, especially. So he says like that is where like when hard times come to Hindus, they are the front runners to support.
Protect
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah, it's okay. Look, you have to have kshatriyas.
So he was putting a question: why not ISKCON and similar organizations do the same thing like RSS? What RSS is doing?
Well, no, ISKCON should, because you're supposed to have the varnas, right? There's kshatriyas and there's sannyasis and there's kshatriyas and so forth. The 4 different orders have to be there in Krishna consciousness. But usually, most temples don't educate people to be kshatriyas. There are people who are naturally kshatriyas, by birth, but you don't see. I mean, you don't see any training to be a kshatriya in Krishna consciousness. You train to be, a brahmana. But brahmanas can also be kshatriyas. They can be kshatriyas and vaishyas also, or at least act like a kshatriya or act like a vaishya, not like a sudra. So you see the Pandavas, they were not brahmanas. They were kshatriyas, right? And so that should, there you should have kshatriyas and